Rachel, thank you so much for being with us on our program today.
Thank you for having me.
Rachel, I'll start with the question, who is Hersh? Tell us a little bit about him, about your beloved son, and what happened to him on October 7th.
So Hersh is my eldest child. He's my only son. He turned 23 on October 23rd. Hersh is an American Israeli dual citizen, and he is a civilian. Hersh is a voracious reader. He loves to read. He's very curious about the world. He is a very passionate soccer fan. He loves music and music festivals, and he's really wild about travel and about geography. When he was a little boy, he had a wonderful teacher in first grade who really taught all of the children to be passionate about learning about the world and about different countries. And since that time, he has been obsessed with maps and atlases and globes. And starting in first grade, he had a subscription to National Geographic magazine, which he would read like a book from cover to cover. He didn't understand that you can skip the boring articles. He actually read all of them. And he's a very curious person about other people. So this past summer, he went for 9 weeks by himself to 6 different countries in Europe, hopping from music festival to music festival and meeting people from all over the world. And he's a very laid back person. He doesn't have a big ego. He likes to ask questions and leave a lot of room for people to answer. And he has a great sense of humor that's dark and dry and sarcastic without being mean, which is actually kind of hard to do, to be sarcastic without being mean. But there's no mean in Hersh. It's just not his personality. So that kind of explains who he is. And I can tell you that what happened to him with the October 7th atrocity to us. For our family, it started on October 6th because Hersh came with us to synagogue on Friday night, October 6th. As I mentioned, he's our oldest and he's our only son. We also have 2 daughters who are 20 and 18. And so the 5 of us, my husband and the 3 kids, we all walked to our synagogue Friday night. We do that every Friday night together. And we celebrated the holiday that is called Simchat Torah, which is when the Torah, the Bible, we complete reading the entire book. We roll it back to the very beginning, and then there's a big celebration of dancing with the Torahs, and people dance in the streets, and it's a really beautiful holiday. So we all danced with the Torah. And many people were excited to see Hersh because, as I mentioned, he had just come back from being away for 9 weeks. So people were asking him about his adventures. And then we walked to friends of ours from synagogue. We walked to their house for dinner afterwards. Hersh had brought with him his camping backpack because he told us that he and one of his childhood best friends, whose name was Honor Shapira, we're going to go together to go do something fun after dinner. So we knew that from dinner, he was going to go camping. Around 11 o'clock p.m. in the evening, he kissed me. He kissed my husband, John, and he said, "I love you. I'll see you tomorrow." And he left with his camping backpack. And that was 142 days ago. That I've been waiting to see him tomorrow, as he promised. And so that was the evening of Friday, October the 6th. October 7th in the morning, we woke up. My husband left for synagogue at 7:30 in the morning. I was still having a cup of tea in our kitchen, and close to 8 o'clock, the bomb sirens started to go off in Jerusalem, where we live, which is very unusual. So I ran to my daughter's bedroom to wake them up and get them into our bomb shelter. Every apartment in Israel has a bomb shelter built into the apartment itself if it's a relatively new building. And we got into our bomb shelter, and the protocol is that you wait 10 minutes. And if you don't hear any explosions, then you come out. So we waited 10 minutes. We didn't hear anything. We came out, and I immediately said to my daughters, even though normally I observe the Jewish Sabbath by not using any technology. So my phone was turned off and in a drawer, and we didn't have TV on or the radio on. And I said to my daughters, you know, this is a matter of life or death. I know that Hersh and Aner are camping outside somewhere, and that somewhere there are rockets falling. I'm turning on my phone to try to reach Hersh. And I turned on my phone at 8:20 in the morning on Saturday morning, and immediately 2 messages popped up in the group that I have with John, my husband, and Hersh. The first message, they were both messages that came in at 8:11. The first message said, I love you. And the second message said, I'm sorry. So immediately you can imagine, as a mother or anyone who doesn't have children but can imagine their own mother, you know, my throat closed and my stomach clenched, and I knew something terrible must be unfolding. I immediately tried to call him, and it just rang and rang. I sent him 3 text messages in a row. Are you okay? Please tell me you're okay. Just let me know you're okay. I'll leave my phone on. And of course, those messages have never been seen. What we ended up finding out happened from eyewitnesses is that when the massacre that began at the Nova Music Festival, which ultimately killed 367 young people, when the massacre began, Hersh and his friend Aner and 2 other kids ran to a car to try to escape with their car. They tried to go north, which is the direction toward Jerusalem, but the road had been blocked by Hamas gunmen who were shooting people at point blank range when they would come close enough in their cars, and killing people. And so there was a massive traffic jam because car after car after car was filled with dead people. And so the cars that were trying to come, there was no way to proceed forward. So their car made a U-turn and they started to go south, which is the opposite direction of home, but they were just trying to get away. The problem was that massive rockets were being launched and dropping in that area in the south. So many of those cars that had gone south to escape the shooting ended up stopping their cars in the middle of the road, and all the kids from the music festival started to run to roadside bomb shelters, which they have throughout the south in Israel. So the bomb shelter that Hersh, Aner, and the 2 others from the car ran into was an 8-foot by 5-foot, very small enclosure. 29 of the people from the Nova Music Festival smushed into that bomb shelter. And Hamas came to the doorway and were throwing in hand grenades, which I have since found out from the time you pull the pin on a hand grenade until it detonates is 4.5 seconds. So it's very, very short period of time. But Aner Shapira was standing in the doorway, and every time a hand grenade would come, he would quickly pick it up and throw it out, pick it up and throw it out. And he managed to do that 7 times successfully. And on the 8th time, while it was in his hand, it exploded and killed him. So then Hamas came to the doorway, and without Aner there to do that, they threw in 3 hand grenades, which detonated. And you can imagine, with, you know, all these young people smashed together in this small space, a lot of damage and carnage and death happened. And then Hamas came to the doorway and just sprayed the room with machine gun fire. So most of those young people were dead right away. And some were trapped under the dead bodies. And it was from 4 of those survivors who were trapped that we heard the eyewitness account of what happened next, which was that Hamas gunmen entered the bomb shelter. Hersh and 3 other boys were against the opposite wall, wounded, but clearly alive. Hamas ordered them to stand up. And when they stood up, that's when all of the witnesses told us that they saw that Hersh's left arm from the elbow down had been blown off. He had somehow tied some sort of bandage, a t-shirt or something around the wound, but they all saw that the bottom of his arm was gone. I'll mention that he, like I, am left-handed. He's left-handed, so that's his dominant arm. The boys were marched out of the bomb shelter at gunpoint, and they were put on a Hamas pickup truck that headed in the direction of Gaza. And the final phone cell signal that we were able to detect from his phone was at 10:25 in the morning from inside of Gaza. We subsequently were being interviewed a week later by Anderson Cooper from CNN. And after the interview, he said, "You guys, I'm going to call you now." And he called us and said, "I didn't want to say this on the air, but I have footage of Hersh's abduction." And we were shocked. And he explained that he had been in Israel trying to do a documentary about the Nova Music Festival. And he had gone down to the camping ground, and he had gone to the bomb shelters. And he encountered some soldiers, Israeli soldiers, who had found a GoPro camera that had fallen from one of the Hamas gunmen's helmets. And they shared the footage with Anderson Cooper. And that's how we have the footage where we actually see Hersh walking on his own 2 feet at gunpoint, getting himself up onto the pickup truck. And when he turns to sit down, you can see the stump where his left arm used to be, and you can see the jagged bone protruding from the wound. And that's the last visual that we have of Hersh, which was 142 days ago.
Rachel, it's even difficult to hear it, and not to mention feeling through all this as a mother. I'm a mother myself, and I had chills even hearing your story and reading it multiple times. How do you handle this? I mean, I see the duct tape on your chest with the number of days that you put every day, a new number, how many days you haven't seen or heard from Hersh. How do you handle it?
Well, the truth is, Paulina, that we wake up every single day and make a concerted effort to pretend to be human. Because what we really want to do is lay on the floor weeping and screaming in anguish. But that won't save him. And that won't save any of them. And so we have to make this effort, and it is a huge effort, to get out of bed and to not let ourselves go to pieces. And we run, and we run, and we run to the ends of the earth. We run to try to save him, our only son, and try to save these 133 other hostages. Now, a lot of times we need our wonderful team to help drag us along. A lot of times we have to say we need a break, because we do have to go in a room and cry and let out that pain. But mostly it is a primal, innate, natural response to any animal, including humans, that when we think that our children, our babies, our offspring are in danger, it is a natural response to try to save them. And that's where the strength usually comes from, this sort of natural, we don't derive it from anywhere. It's a very primal human response. And also, you know, we are religious people. We are faithful people throughout the day. We are praying the traditional Jewish prayers that Jewish people have been saying for thousands of years. We also get a lot of strength from the book of Psalms. I say Psalms throughout the day. And, you know, we also get wonderful words of encouragement and support from millions of people all over the world, including, I just last night got a message from someone who said, "Hi, I live in Krakow."
Mm-hmm. Oh,
so
surprising.
Including in Poland. And people say, you know, I'm Catholic, or I'm Buddhist, or I'm, Episcopalian, whatever it is, people feel the need to share with us their name, where they are, their religion, and then they, share prayers for Hersh. And that gives us tremendous strength to know that the world is behind not just him, but all of the hostages. I have to tell you that Christmas Eve was one of the most meaningful, powerful, beautiful moments for us. We received over 1,000 photographs of people's Christmas dinner tables with an empty plate with Hersh's name on the plate. We received photographs of people at midnight mass all over the world, and there were posters of Hersh and other hostages on the altar with candles around it. This is a global humanitarian crisis. These hostages are from many different nations around the world. Originally, they were representing 39 different nations, which when I spoke at the UN, I had been told it was 33, and I was corrected afterwards. And now they say there are at least 18 different nationalities still being held. We know that last week it was 19, but last week, we had this miraculous, wonderful rescue of 2 Argentinian men who had been in Gaza this whole entire time. So those are ways that we derive strength to keep going.
Rachel, from a mother of 3 who would bake cookies at home, wait with them for the kids to come back home, and a teacher, day to day you became an international advocate of hostages who were abducted to Gaza, meeting leaders like Joe Biden and speaking at the United Nations. One of the leaders that you met in November was Pope Francis. What did that meeting mean to you? How do you remember it?
Oh my gosh, I felt incredibly grateful and blessed, and really, truly just lucky to have the opportunity to meet Pope Francis. There are 1.3 billion Catholics around the world, and I'm sure that so many would give anything to have a meeting with the Pope. So the fact that he opened his world to us and invited us, I was part of a small group. I think we were 11 families, 11 individuals representing 11 different hostages. And he took time to hear our stories, some of our stories. And he said something so wise to me, I thought, which was, he watched the video of Hersh, that I told you that we had gotten the video of his actual abduction. And first of all, he was very emotional when he saw it. It's a graphic, difficult video to watch. And he said, what you've experienced is terrorism. Terrorism is the absence of humanity. And I had never heard it explained so wisely and succinctly and clearly. And before that explanation, I had started to lose hope in humanity. And what Pope Francis did is he gave me permission to understand I don't have to lose hope in humanity. What I am experiencing and what Hersh is experiencing is the absence of humanity. And so it helped me to remain hopeful that in the future we can recover from this.
Rachel, October 7th, for many Jewish people, brought back the worst memories of the Holocaust. I mean, I'm speaking to you from Poland, and here I remember my grandmother telling me about the atrocities on her Jewish neighbors and friends. Do you think it will be ever possible to recover from this atrocity in your region, and whether a Jewish-Palestinian dialogue would be ever possible again?
Well, I think that's kind of two questions. The first part of the question is, can we ever recover? Um, I think something that we did learn out of the Holocaust is that the human spirit can be very resilient. We know from the Holocaust that people suffered horrible losses and horrible devastation and horrible misery, and somehow we're able to rise from the ashes and to go on and to build good, long lives. So I think that humans have the capacity to recover even from horrible, traumatic, terrorizing events. And I do pray that Israelis and Palestinians will move forward and somehow build a future that works for both peoples. You know, my heart breaks when I think of Hersh, and my heart also breaks when I see the horrible suffering of the innocent Gazan civilians who, just like Hersh, are caught in this crossfire of conflict, which we see all over the world. I mean, you in Poland are right near the conflict that's happening with Ukraine and Russia. You know, as we know from world history and as we know right now, it is always the innocents who suffer the greatest in these conflicts. And we see that right now. And I pray that there will be courage and creativity and insight and intellect to have the ability to go forward and make a better future for all the peoples who are suffering.
For sure, it will be hard to pick up the dialogue right away after what happened.
I mean, I think, unfortunately, we're in a moment of trauma. I think a lot of that trauma is ongoing because we still have 134 hostages who are, you know, ranging in age from the youngest one is a baby who just turned 1 year old in captivity. The oldest one is an 84-year-old grandfather. We have Christians, Jews, Muslims, Buddhists, and Hindu all being held hostage. And it's a situation that is so deeply traumatizing. And then you have all hundreds of thousands of Gazan civilians who are displaced, who are suffering. So many also have died. I think there's a lot of distrust. And how do you build a relationship when two sides are so not trusting of each other? And I think the first thing, of course, is that the current situation is going to have to change. Because while we're in the trauma, I don't think there is a lot of room for building that. And that's why I was praying so hard, because I just think the entire world is ready for an end to the sorrow and suffering. We want an end to the sighing and the pain.
Rachel, I recently read at the Wall Street Journal in depicting your story in an interview with you, where you said there was an episode, you stumbled on a sidewalk, you fell, and a stranger came to help you, and he asked, "What do you need?" And you just screamed, "I need my son." My last question is, what gives you hope in this situation?
Well, you know, I say to everyone that hope is mandatory. Hope is not an optional feeling. Hope is absolutely mandatory. Optimism is mandatory. We just have to stay focused on positive and moving forward and talking to every single person we can talk to. We don't know who the person is going to be. What is the stone that's going to overturn, that's going to be the solution to not just this problem right now, but to the problems that we have going forward as human beings? You know, that we always seem to fall back into this pattern of revenge and violence and pain, revenge, violence, pain. It's not constructive. It doesn't end up working. So we need to come up with more creative ways. We're blessed. We are blessed as people with this unbelievable intellect. Let's use it. let's not fall back into these comfortable ways and patterns of hatred, of violence, and of revenge. And my way of staying hopeful is I really believe that Hersh will come home.
Well, certainly that's my wish to you, Rachel, as a mother. Thank you so much for this conversation, for sharing your testimony.
Thank you so much. And I hope next time I see you, Paulina, he'll be sitting next to me.